Dianne, you're outside the North Gauteng High Court. Judge Thokozile Masipa has now made a break for lunchtime, and we know that she said that Oscar Pistorius is not guilty of murder. Can you break down what that means for us, please?
Yes, this is a very big development for Oscar Pistorius and also for his case and his legal team. There were two different options in terms of law, of ways that Oscar could have been found guilty of murder. That would have been dolus eventualis and dolus directus. Now, dolus directus would have been if you had the direct intention to kill Sebastian Mukam. That would have been basically premeditated murder. Judge Masipa found that the prosecution had not proven premeditated murder beyond a shadow of a doubt, and that left then dolus eventualis, which is essentially if you would have killed someone not with the premeditation but with the knowing that you could have killed him, so you knew that by discharging your weapon that you could have killed that person, but then you reconciled yourself with that fact. Now, Judge Masipa found that Oscar Pistorius is also not guilty on that count. What that then leaves is something for her to touch on after break, which will be a possible culpable homicide conviction, or he could get acquitted on that charge as well.
So at this stage, she's ruled out murder in terms of with intent or with the possibility that it might have happened, but in terms of culpable homicide, that's something we still need to find out once we go back into court after the break.
Yes, that's correct. You'll recall that that was one of the charges that was included on the charge sheet by the prosecution, and they argued that the judge should find, if she doesn't find Oscar Pistorius guilty of murder, that she should find him guilty of culpable homicide. That is something, if he is convicted, which could result in some jail time for him, but it would be a lesser conviction than a murder conviction, and obviously there will also be some argument about whether he should get the maximum sentence or not. So we're going to hear about that when court goes back to session. And you also remember that there are a number of charges relating to Oscar Pistorius discharging his weapon. The one incident in the Tasha's restaurant, and the second incident where he discharged his weapon out of the sunroof of a moving vehicle. So we still have to get to those charges. For now, she spent most of the day just dealing with the main charge, that would be the murder charge.
Yeah, and in fact, on the eNCA.com Oscar trial live blog, we do have footage of Judge Masipa making that announcement about it not being murder. So that's eNCA.com/Oscar trial. In terms of Oscar's response to what Judge Masipa said just before lunch, what was his reaction? How did he look in the dock? Can you go through that for us, please?
Well, Oscar Pistorius has actually been sitting in the dark for much of the morning, crying. He was sobbing at some point, actually leaning over, and we're sitting behind him in the press station. You can actually see him sort of heaving his body. He was crying that intensely. When it came to Judge Masipa saying that he was not guilty on both of the possible options for a murder charge, that's when he really seemed to be crying a lot more. And when she took that break, we saw his sister, Amy Pistorius, going into the dock, actually sitting there with him and hugging him and trying to console him. His brother, Carl Pistorius, is here in court as well, and he is actually in a wheelchair, and he seems to have a cast on both his legs. So he was actually trying to get closer to where Oscar Pistorius was sitting, but was struggling because the wheelchair was having difficulty actually navigating through that area in court. So it's obviously quite a big win on his part and for his defense team, because really it's the difference between being completely acquitted, spending a few years in jail, or a life sentence. So those were sort of the possibilities of what could have happened.
Yeah. And we know as well that Oscar's father, HANGOUT, who has been quite absent for a lot of the hearings, he was in court this morning, and that's the second time that he's participated in supporting the family during the trial, despite that estranged relationship. Can you tell me, does this ruling, or what Judge Masipa has said so far, does that let Oscar Pistorius off the hook?
No, well, not completely. As we mentioned before, there is that culpable homicide option. And what Judge Masipa did say so far is that it's clear that Oscar Pistorius killed Lieber Steenkamp unlawfully. Now the question is whether his actions were those of a reasonable person. Would anyone else in that same situation have acted in the same way? We're going to hear her look in more detail at what the requirements are for culpable homicide conviction and whether the state has proven that case sufficiently for him to be convicted of that. There are also three other charges to the guns, the weapons, and those also have to be, adjudicated, and Judge Masipa has to explain what her ruling is on that. So we'll have to see later this afternoon what she says about that, and if it takes quite a lengthy time, we could be back here tomorrow morning.
Yeah. And in fact, on the Tasha's gun incident and also Oscar shooting through the vehicle, we do have information and stories on that again on the live blog, which is eNCA.com/Oscar trial. Dianne, I can hear some chanting and singing in the background where you are outside court, and I think it's important. I imagine that's in connection with Lieber Steenkamp, the person in fact key to this trial, but obviously not there, and somewhat kind of sidelined by Oscar's verdict today. What can you tell us, or what has been the support for Reva that you've seen?
Well, since the beginning of the trial, there's been quite a lot of support from people associated with the ANC Women's League and members of the ANC Women's League. We saw a number of them in court today, and there are some of them outside court. They've been singing and marching. They've got the placard with them. And they were singing a song earlier on, which basically translated says, what you're doing isn't right, and I believe that's in response to the judgment. They're not very happy about the fact that Oscar Pistorius hasn't been found guilty of murder. Earlier on, this morning, I spoke to a representative from the ANC, and they felt that it was necessary for Judge Masipa to show that that the justice system takes a strong line when it comes to the abuse and murder of women. However, Judge Masipa said that the evidence doesn't actually show any kind of abuse, and she's accepted Oscar Pistorius' version that the shooting was an accident and that he actually thought that he was shooting at an intruder when he charged that weapon. So, one of the main points of the state's case that they tried to drive home was this issue of Oscar Pistorius being an abusive boyfriend and intentionally killing his girlfriend. But the judge said that the evidence actually doesn't support that, and she's not accepting that as an explanation.
So audible chanting, singing from outside the North Gauteng High Court. Members of the ANC's Women's League, they're saying that they're not happy with the ruling so far from Judge Kuzile Masipa. But Dianne, I take it you'll be going back in to keep us updated. You are on Twitter at Dianne Hawker, at eNCA News is also following things live as they happen, and we'll certainly be keeping people updated on our live blog. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to hearing what happens next in this long and extended and highly, highly participatory trial. Thank you, Dianne.
Thanks, Aaron.